Just wanted to showcase the level of commitment that I have for this project. I already bought the paint, and this is the Caterpillar Highway Yellow. It's a CML 301-1, and then I got the primer to go with that paint, 0405-1, and a few rattle cans. It should end up about that color. Got to get it in the right light for some touch-up. 4G's carcass looks rather sad right now, and the further we get into it, the more sad it's going to look. But we're at a point, I got a couple more things I need to take apart now that weren't planned, and that's the final drives. This one over here especially had water in it. This one over here has been in pretty good shape. That outer bearing over there, I'm going to leave, but this one here needs to go away. The water just got to it a little too much. That side over there had oil and grease in it, and it kind of coated everything with that black tar grease, but it did preserve it. On this side, that's where we had the rust and the worst bearings. And while I'm in it, while I got them out, I put new bearings in it. The plan right now is to, I think, start with this side, pull this sprocket off, because this is the one that had water in it, and inspect those bearings. I know we need to get into those bellows seals. I've got new ones, but I am absolutely terrified of pulling the sprocket off of here. I've seen other videos on YouTube, in not well with the puller, and all I have is that 20-ton, which hopefully will work, but if it doesn't work, I don't know where we're going to be at with that. Anyway, this is going to be next in line, but before I get started on 4G today, I got to get outside and do a little bit of maintenance. I've been lacking and very far behind, and the weather's at least cleared up, and some of the snow has melted to where I can kind of work on it. Dragging tracks, pushing snow, running a skid steer around in circles took a toll on the driveway. So it's time to do my favorite thing, which I call the Farmall Zen Garden, and hook up a couple of harrow sections and pull them around. And oh boy, we ain't forgot about you yet. It just ain't your day to shine today. Today's day to shine is going to be the 400 Farmall. This is another one that's been in the family its whole life, and at one point it had a wide front end and a farmhand on here. That's going to be another great story for my dad to tell about how that got bent, but we put it back to the old original tricycle configuration. You might be wondering why the weird overflow tube. I just stuck that on there. It was a spare piece of hose laying up on the workbench. This is a new radiator, and I haven't had time to solder anything on there and get it plumbed in the same location as it was factory. The reproduction radiators, unfortunately, aren't exactly the same as is most things reproduction. Now, I don't know if you can see that, but it does say overdrive, but I will assure you that this is not the overdrive. This is just a choke cable that my grandfather, being the farmer that he is, was, and always will be, used what we had. Give it a little throttle. Got the maintainer on the battery. Already turned on the fuel. Make sure we're out of gear. That's an Hollis-Chalmers gauge. Before I get started with what we're doing today, just wanted to show you, I had some more new parts come in. These old seals underneath of here, I'm going to have to salvage because there is no new ones. So I got them sitting here on the bench with some weight on them to kind of press them flat. We're going to have to reuse them. Fortunately, they came off in one piece. Here's that cork that goes around the axles on the upper final drive. Here's a new old stock outer bearing for the final drive. Seals for the final drive. This is the inner race for that outer bearing on the final drive. This is a valve for the fuel tank. So this is the new cat part number for that valve that comes out of the fuel tank. And I still have the handle. Virtually just a brass ball valve. Nothing super fancy or special. That's a 2B1397. Some O-rings for the fuel injectors. New bearings for the inner final drives. Those are the ones that are just outside of the steering clutches. Here's the old one that's rusted, and it was a good call to get rid of that. Oh, the coolest thing is this tool. So now I can put a 1/2 inch extension and a wrench on there. It's a 212-8146. This is a cat tool. It's got the two sides for the plugs. Super hard to find. I think there's some left on eBay. And some of the Caterpillar fine thread and coarse thread bolts and nuts that I've broken off so we can get those replaced. Now to get back to business on the D4, and that business is to get this sprocket off of here. I honestly don't know where to start. I've looked at the manual, I've looked at the books, and it's pretty much just start taking all this stuff apart. I'm afraid to take the track frames off, but I think we're going to end up doing that at some point or another. I just realized I'm going to need to weld another one of these right here and tap it to hold those guards. I need to get this removed. I got a lot of work ahead of me. I've been spraying a little penetrating oil on everything, and I went to turn this sprocket and noticed there's something loose in there. I know it was a bit off camera, but all these came loose super easy. I'm going to take these off. Got grease in it. That is a good sign. More worried about the inside one. Okay. So it's kind of doweled, so it won't come off. It won't spin in there. Well, the thing of it is, we'll make it easier to clean everything up so we can paint it. It'll look factory new if everything keeps going like this. Figured out what's holding me. Inside there, I don't know if you can see it. There's a pesky grease zerk that's got to be unscrewed before I can pull all of this housing off of here. There's that bugger. It was underneath of there, keeping that from coming off. I should have known better than to think that we were going to get away from pulling this sprocket without taking these track frames off. And a quick review of the book, which is what I should have done in the first place. No, I haven't learned. That's just how we do things. I was guessing I could get into this just enough to see what things look like in there and maybe not have to go that far. But according to the book, I got to go that far. And right here in the book, it clearly states, disconnect the track roller frame and roll it forward on the track as outlined in the topic track roller frame. So let's go back there and see what they say about that. I will say that we are absolutely terrified of this step. This step is worrying us tremendously. It's not going to be fun, and it's going to be a lot of work. I just checked the book. I need to remove those guards on the bottom of here. Take the bearings off on the pivot shaft up in there underneath of the steering clutch compartment, and then let this whole thing down. And theoretically, and yes, it does say in the book to remove that grease fitting, loosen these, let this track frame down, and then I can roll it forward on the floor. Ideally, the tracks would be split and you could roll it forward and back on the tracks, but in this case, we're well past that point. So, 4G, if you look pathetic this morning, you're about to look more pathetic. This is going to be just a ton of hard labor and planning and work. So I've got a kind of a tail stand under the front of that transmission bell housing and clutch compartment bell housing. And the plan is to take these outer track guards off so I can get a jack under there to hold it up and get it blocked up so I can take the inner track guards off. Once those are off, I'll have everything on blocks up front here. Then I can go in the back and undo the bearings on the pivot shaft. In theory, that should work. Well, that's interesting. I just noticed that when I set down the transmission, the bell housing on that setup that I have there, and let the track frames back down, this gap formed underneath it here. I might be able to pull those off. That might be good news, but the bad news is somewhere there's a lot of play and wear in something, and I'm hoping that it's not on those pivot shaft bearings. I actually think that what happened is that this strap that we had across these roller frames and underneath that bell housing was kind of holding these track frames together. So once it let loose, they kind of settled outward on each side. I'm not super fond of the amount of twist that's in this track frame. They like 3/4 bolts. 3/4 size bolts. Size head, socket head. You knew what I meant. There's always one. At least one. Now in theory, should be able to kind of roll that out of here and let it down. These aren't super heavy. They're pretty light steel. One down. The good news is those will paint up rather nicely when we can lay them out flat and spray them. And let's get the inside off. I think that one's going to interfere too. So I'm going to support this frame back here. I don't know why, but I feel like I need to do that, because it makes me nervous about that track frame. I've spent the last couple of hours removing those track guards on here, on the inner and outer, which is not an easy deal. I got the outer off of that side. I got the inner to do still, but I got it blocked up, so it should be fine, and I can do that later. I got this side of the track frame down on the ground in the front, a rubber block up there, a jack under here, under the frame, and for extra precaution, I got the crane hooked up to the inner track frame that goes to the pivot shaft. So, next thing to do, I'm going to get under there, unbolt that bearing cap, and hopefully, if all goes well, let this track frame down on the ground, and ideally, roll it out of here. I think I feel comfortable enough that I can take these bearing cap bolts out of here and let this track frame down on this side. Okay. That was anticlimactic, and I'm glad it was. So let me get some blocks under here so I can get my jack pulled out of here. like driving a unicycle. Okay, so here are the pivot shaft bearings, and they are pretty well shot, the bottom especially. Actually, both of them. Might have to just run them anyway. I'll have to see. I don't know that I'm going to be able to find those. So we started the day with old 4G looking pretty pathetic, and ended the day with 4G, old Lefty, looking even more pathetic, and now without the left track frame. So got it out over here. It'll be great. We can clean it this way, paint it. I can check the rollers. I'll lift it up with the skid steer, probably take it outside, clean it, flip it around. Whew, I'm out of breath. That was a lot of work to get that track frame out of there today, and honestly, the hardest part was getting those guards off. Still got one to do over here, but we're well on our way. I do want to thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Click the notification bell so you can see when new videos are uploaded. And we'll see you on the next one.